Okay. Basic Ches, right? Basic Ches.
Amen. It's very good. He drinks hot water.
Okay.
The Kabbalist.
Okay, today we're going to start on the second line from Daf Yomi Warriors, right? Okay, we thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. And in the schus of our learning, we should have Beis Hamikdash immediately. We're discussing a question that was posed by Rav Ashi. The question was that we know if a Nazir becomes Tameh, he has to go through the process of purification, and one part of that process to shave his hair. What if a Kayan? What if not a Kayan? What if a did I say a Kayan before? No. If a Nazir becomes Tameh, he has to shave his head. What if he was Tameh before he became a Nazir, and then he vowed to become a Nazir? So the Nazirus, the counting of the Nazirus only starts when he's pure. But does he have to shave his head before the process of the Nazirus, before that? So that was his question. Now we're holding Tashima on the top. We had proofs back and forth, and each proof was disproved. Tashima, it's a common lesson. The pasuk says, "V'timi reish nizrei." I should get a chumash. Any chumash or bamidbar. Any chumash that you see on the top shelf over there, or over there, a bamidbar. Yeah. You see on the top shelf over there, it says the 5 books. Yeah, just bring one of those. Okay. Let me go through the order of the psukim here, because the whole Gemara today is all about this.
Numbers 6, 9.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so chapter 6 in Bamidbar, Parshas Nasa. Over here it's talking about the person that becomes a Nazir, so he can't have wine, vinegar of wine, anything from the grapes, the peels. He can't shave his head until he finishes his Nazirus and his hair is holy. He can't become Tameh, not to his father, to his mother, to his brother, none of them. Okay, Pasuk 9 says that if suddenly someone dies, and v'timei reish nizrei, causing the holy hair of his Nazirite head to become ritually impure. Okay, so what happens? So it says that he should shave his head on the day of his purity. On the 7th day, he should shave his head. It takes 7 days to become pure. On the 8th day, he brings 2 birds, either dove or turtle dove. He brings them to the entrance of the tent of meeting. And the Kayan makes one a chatas and one an oila. And he sanctifies his head on that day. What day is that? The day that he brings the birds, which is the 8th day. That's what it looks like. And then it says v'hizir la'Hashem es yamin Nazirei. He recounts his Nazirus, and he brings a lamb for an asham. Okay. So now we start over here. It says v'timei reish Nazirei. He made impure the head of the holy hair, the holy head of the Nazir. Who is this referring to? Bitar shenitma hakasav medaber. It's talking about someone that was pure, was a Nazir, and had become Tameh. So then we have the rules of that he has to shave his head. He's the one that needs to shave his head and bring the birds of the sacrifices. which is a chatas and a noila. And it's coming to tell me that it doesn't apply. Lifter as a nazir bekever she'in tanava sarba v'siparim. It's coming to exempt the one that was impure before he started, that he doesn't need to shave his head and to bring the bird. Now, Tosfos points out over here, Tosfos is I think the main commentary that points out that it's because of the continuation of the pasuk that says, Vayamim harishonim yiplu, the first days fall off. And since this person doesn't have first days because he was tamei before he started, he never started counting the Naziris because he was tamei when he accepted on himself to be a Nazir. Let's say he accepted on himself while he was in the cemetery, I'm going to be a Nazir. So it doesn't start until it becomes pure. So the continuation of the verse that says that the first days fall off would not apply to him. So therefore the shaving of the head and the sacrifices don't apply to that purification process.
Does that answer the question from yesterday?
Yeah. Yeah, we're answering the question now. The machlekes Rabbi Yechon Reish Lakish had to do with Malchus. Now we're talking about Rav Ashi's question, if he has to shave his head from the impurity when he's tamei before the Naziris came on. Yeah, correct. But that, yeah. And we were talking about over there if you get Malchus. That's how we concluded. Okay. Now the Gemara says, well, it's a brisa. It says that we need the pasuk. I wouldn't have known this automatically. It says, "V'alei dvarim kal v'chaimer." Not for the pasuk, I would have said that it's logical to say the opposite. Matar shenit mata and havar sarva v'siparim. If someone that was pure, but became tamei, in order to purify him, to restart this count, he has to shave his head and also bring the birds. Misha yatami mitchila. If someone was so impure that even before he started, he was already impure, then for sure he should have to shave his head and to bring the birds. So therefore, I need the pasuk that tells me that that doesn't apply. Okay. We had a discussion. Yeah, that was a discussion in the Mishnah. That was the first discussion of Rabbi Yechon Reish Lakish. Is there considered Naziris on him? Then we adjusted that discussion. That was the first. So Talmud Laimar, so therefore I need the pasuk of V'timi Reish Nizir Mishu Tarvanit Makasam Medaber Shitana Vastzarva Vestipram V'lifter Sanasu Bekever Shema Mina. We see from this, we have now a conclusion that the one that was tamei before all of this started does not need to shave his head to start the Naziris. Only someone that was a regular Nazir that becomes tamei, he's the one that needs to shave his head. Seems like we have a clear proof.
So is this the final answer?
That's what it seems like, yeah. Shema Mina.
In other words, what we use, the final answer is that the issue is becoming tamei rather than the state of being tamei.
Right. And we would base it on this pasuk, the Timirish Nizrei, because the pasuk says, "Vayamim harishonim yiplu." Keep sucking later. It says, "In the first days fall off." Ki tami Nizrei. That would only apply to someone that had Naziris before. That he has to restart. Over here, he never had Naziris before that he has to restart, so it doesn't apply. Man Tana had the Tana Rabbanan. Who is the author of the following brisa? Tana Rabbanan is an important brisa. Ein bein tamei shenazar l'nazir. I'm sorry. Ein bein tamei shenazar l'nazir tar shenitma. Remember, it says ein bein. There's no difference. It's always about to tell you a difference. There's no difference, but there's only one difference between someone that was tamei that became a nazir to someone that was a nazir that became tamei. Ela shetami shenazar. If he was tamei and then he became a nazir, shvi shaloi eilolai min haminyan. The seventh day, he's allowed to restart the counting. Not restart. Start the counting. Start the counting. Yeah, we mentioned this before. The nazir tar shenitma. Ein shvi shlai elam min aminyan. The way we explained it before, the way the Gemara is going to explain it now, is that there's sacrifices that need to be brought before he can restart the counting. So if he doesn't have to bring the sacrifices, then he starts immediately on the seventh day. He doesn't have to bring the sacrifices. So why doesn't he have to bring the sacrifice? Because he was not a Nazir before the Tumah. The one who brings the sacrifice was the Nazir first, and then he becomes Tummy. One that was Tummy first, the one that was a Nazir first, and then becomes Tummy. He has to wait for the 8th day to start because he has to wait for the sacrifice.
Are there, it just talks about someone who goes to a cemetery and that's how they're tummy. Are there other instances where they might become tummy that they may have to wait?
I think it's only with the corpse. Only with the corpse, yeah.
Because I was wondering if that was just an example that they've been using, or is that
No,
just
in the
straight up?
psukim it says v'chiyamas meisalav. It's a corpse.
Oh,
Yeah. Someone dies. No, if he drinks wine, he doesn't become impure. That was just a violation. But or if he cuts his hair, it's just a violation. Okay, so we're asking who is the author? Who is the author of this brisa? Means we're going to look for a Tana that we're going to associate. We're going to find a Tana, an author of a brisa that says something that would match up with this brisa. We'll say that it's going to be him. Amar Rav Chisda, Rav Chisda says Rebbe, the opinion of Rebbe. Rebbe is Rebbe Yudah Nasi. Amar Rebbe says Ein Naziris Tahira Chala Ela Ad Shmini. You have to wait for the 8th day to start. Okay, so that means that if he's restarting the Naziris, he has to wait for the 8th day.
What is he quoting from?
Oh, actually,
Another
that's a good
brisa?
point. That's a good point because Rav Chisda is just telling us what he says, and then the Gemara is going to say, where does Rav Chisda see this Rebbe? And we're going to quote a brisa that says it. Yeah, so we're in between another brisa, yeah. So we're in between. First, we're just getting the information, and then it's going to quote it. The Tamer Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda, because if you would say it's Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda, that's the son of Rabbi Yehuda bar Rabbi Loi. If you say that it's him, Ha'amar, he says Nazir's the Tahara, Mishrihu the Chayla, that starts on the 7th day. Okay, so now we're mentioning two opinions of when the Naziris restarts. Is it on the 8th day or on the 7th day? Rebbe holds that it starts on the 8th day. 8th day means that he goes through the purification process for 7 days. On the 3rd day, he gets sprinkled with the ashes, and on the 7th day, he gets sprinkled. And then he shaves his head, and then on the 8th day, bring the sacrifices, and that's when he starts counting 1 to 30 days for the new Naziris. And Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda says that he actually starts that on the 7th day, before the sacrifices are brought.
so this is not like a pause that we were talking about earlier.
No,
He
this is
doesn't
a
have to shave his
recap.
head or
This is
give any corrections.
no, this is he has to shave his head and bring the sacrifices,
But when you were saying you would reset, so you start all over again.
and then you start over, and
That's
then
not
you
the case
start
with
over.
pause.
No,
You're talking about a Nazir that became
Yeah.
pure.
not a impure that became a Nazir. Right, because we're going to apply these verses here of the verses of he brings the sacrifices, he shaves his head. That only applies to someone that was a Nazir that then became impure. My Rebbe, Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda. You see, now we ask, where did you just get this from? He quoted these opinions, but what's the source of that? Well, the Tanya, we have a brisa. Brisa says, "V'kidis esreishay b'yayim hahu." He makes his head holy on that day. That means he starts to recount. What's b'yayim hahu? What is on that day? So let me just tell you how this works in the psukim. Is that 11? He's a Nazir. Someone suddenly dies. He shaves his head on the 7th day. On the 8th day, he brings the birds. On that day,
So he's tahor.
So which day is it? On the 8th day he brings the birds, and then he makes his head holy on that day. Sounds like what we just said. He shaves his head the day before, but then the pasuk that's in verse 9. He shaves his head on the 7th day. Verse 10 says on the 8th day he brings the birds. Verse 11, one of them is a chatas, one of them is the oila, and he sanctifies his head on that day. Sounds like the karbanos. Then it goes on. Verse 12 says that he brings a sheep for an asham. Okay, so in the middle over here, in the middle it says that he sanctifies his head on that day. So Rebbe says, "Bayom havas karbanaisav." It's on the day of bringing the sacrifices, which we just said. This in the pasuk, it just said right after the sacrifice, it says that he sanctifies his head. That means he restarts. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda, I'm Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda says no. But Yaimahu takes me back to the day that he shaved his head, back to verse 9. On that day. And this said it was taught in a Mishnah, Nazir Shenitma Tumis Harbe Aina Mevi Ala Karban Echad Mantana. We have a Mishnah that says a Nazir that became tummy many times. He just keeps becoming tummy. Tummy, he gets tummy again, he gets tummy again.
The tummy cycle is over, like becomes tummy within the time that he's tummy becomes tummy again.
Yeah. You're getting too detailed because I'm leaving it vague because the Gemara is going to go into the details of that. So he only brings one carbon. So who's the author of this? Of that statement? Amar Rav Chisda, Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda. Because it says it has to be Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda. So Rav Chisda here is telling us who's the author of this brisa. Now who's the author of this brisa? The Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda says Nazir Stara Mishvi Chayla, that he starts the count from the 7th day. I'll read it through and then I'll explain. Maybe let me explain first. What happens is like this. I'll explain it first. If someone was tamei, your example is if someone's tamei, then it becomes tamei again, and then it becomes tamei again, and it was never restarted the Nazirus, then I won't call that someone that becomes tamei many times. I'll just say someone that was tamei. Because if he doesn't restart it, then he never, it's only one long tumah.
Count 7 days
after the end.
So it could be more.
When he brings, right, it could be much more than a week, but we'll say that he only brings one sacrifice. Of course, he only brings one sacrifice. He never stopped the tumah. It was just a continuation. Just he kept becoming tummy. How would I have a case where someone becomes tummy many times? Must be that he stopped it. He works in the Chevra Kadisha. How would I have a case where he becomes tummy many times? Is when he did the purification process. The Nazirus was supposed to start, or starts, becomes tummy again, and then this happens the same thing again, and it happens again and again. So at the end, we're saying that he only has to bring one sacrifice. The problem is that if the Nazirus restarted, then he would really have to bring the sacrifice per tumah, not one. So how are we ever going to have it's separate tumas and not separate karbanas? That's what we're looking for. So we said we can do that according to Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda, but we can't do it according to Rebbe. Now, if you follow it, it makes sense because Rebbe says that the Nazirus only restarts on the 8th day. So you would have to become Tameh the second time on the 8th day, and the third time would have to be on the 8th day. But if it would be the 8th day, then you would already be obligated to bring another sacrifice. So the rule here that you only bring one sacrifice doesn't fit according to Rebbe. Only according to Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda that says that the Nazirus restarts on the 7th day. So he can restart his Nazirus without the obligation to bring the sacrifices. And that's how he becomes tummy on the 7th day. He does become tummy again. It does break the Nazirus, but he doesn't have to bring an extra sacrifice per each time he breaks it, because obligation to bring the sacrifices is only on the 8th day. And he got it in. He became tummy before that. There's a smaller window. At least according to Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda, there is a window to be able to become tummy without having to bring the sacrifices. And according to Rebbe, you don't have that window.
But in that opinion, it's the sacrifices is not the conclusion. It's like the conclusion happens before the sacrifice.
Right. Right. That's what we would say according to Rabbi Yisrael Rabbi Yehuda. The conclusion is before the sacrifice. The conclusion is by the shaving of the head. Yeah. So we say that it's Rabbi Yisrael Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar Nazir's Tahara Mishvi Chayla, that the new Nazirus, the pure Nazirus, starts from the seventh day. Umishkachaslan, the example would be Kigan Shenitva B'Shvi. He became tummy on the seventh day. B'Chazav B'Nitva B'Shvi comes tummy again on the seventh day. Even the Leyatza Shari Lavi Carbon, since he didn't have it 1 hour that he was fit, eligible to bring the sacrifice, so at the end of all of this, he was only chayav 1 carbon. Because if you would say it's the opinion of Rebbe, if he becomes tummy on the seventh day, and then becomes tummy again on the seventh day, it's all one long tumah, right? Because he never restarted, because according to Rebbe, you have to wait for the 8th day. And if he becomes tummy according to Rebbe on the 8th day, he becomes tummy again on the 8th day, then there would have been an hour that he would have entered into the time where he needs to bring the new sacrifice. And we said you only have to bring 1 sacrifice. So according to Rebbe, it doesn't fit. Okay. That explained Rav Chisda's attributing this brisa to Rabbi Yisrael Rabbi Yehuda. My time of the Rebbe. What's the reason for Rebbe that says that you only start the new count on the 8th day? Again, someone was a Nazir, he becomes Tameh. The purification is 7 days. Brings the sacrifices on the 8th day. According to Rebbe, that's when it starts. My time with the Rebbe, Omakra, the pasuk says, that it atones for him that he sinned on his soul. And then it says that he sanctifies his head, so which means after it says that he brings the sacrifices, then it says that he sanctifies his head on that day, which means that it's referring to after the sacrifice of brought, which is the 8th day. Rabbi Yisrael Rabbi Yehuda, what does Rabbi Yisrael Rabbi Yehuda say? Seems from the order of the psukim that Rebbe is correct. How does Rabbi Yisrael Yehuda say that it goes back to the 7th day, back to pasuk Tes, pasuk 9, when you're in pasuk Yud Aleph? Yeah. How does it go back to the? So Rabbi Yisrael Rabbi Yehuda Imkain, he says, if so, it would be according to Rebbe, let it just say that he sanctifies his head. Top of the page. What does it mean by Yayim Hahu on that day? On that day is the relative pronoun. What's that day? You don't have to tell me that day. That's what you're talking about. It must be you're talking about that other day. What's the other day? That's going back to the day that if it's not necessary for Shmini, because we were just talking about that. You don't need a relative pronoun when you're talking about exactly that. It must be going back to the 7th day, which was the 7th day was when they shaved the head. What does Rabbi do with the words Bayoimahu on that day? Shaves his head. He sanctifies his head on that day. What does it mean on that day? So Amalach Rebbe says lahachi hudasa. Hahu lahachi dasa. The word hahu, that pronoun of hahu, that, right? It's not a this. It's a that. It's not this day. It's a relative pronoun, not a demonstrative. Lahachi hudasa. It's coming to tell me even though he didn't bring the sacrifices, it's coming to tell me that the day is significant. It's not the sacrifices that are significant. It's the day that he brings the sacrifices, but it's not the sacrifices that are significant. Even if he didn't bring the sacrifices, the new count already starts. That's Rabbi Yisrael. That we get from Bayayim Hahu on that day. What about Rabbi Yisrael Bar Yehuda? Well, he doesn't need any of this. The new count starts even before the sacrifices even started. Starts on the 7th day. Okay. The conclusion happens with the sacrifices, but the new count starts before the conclusion.
So
Yeah.
Rabbi Yossi says that it starts
On the 7th day.
7th day.
Rebbe says that it starts on the 8th day, but the sacrifices don't affect the recount.
So according to Rabbi Yossi, if you give a carbon, does he himself give the carbon? And if
Yeah.
he does he become tamei from the carbon?
No,
or
no, no,
just
no.
a
According to
like a
Rabbi
person?
Yehuda, what's happening is he became tamei. On the seventh day, he shaves his head. On the seventh day, he can already start to recount 1 to 30,
Yeah, but he doesn't have to give a carbon too.
and he still brings the carbon, but that's fine.
He doesn't
Carbon,
become-
no. The carbon is he goes to the temple and they take care of it.
oh, they take
Yeah.
it from him and they
Yeah,
But
but a
with-
dead animal
it
doesn't make him tamei if it's shechted. And here we're talking about the only tumah that would be an issue would be from a corpse.
it would be
Okay,
an animal corpse that wasn't.
that's a tumas nevela. Yeah, but that's not the same level tumah. That's not a 7-day tumah. That's a 1-day tumah.
Oh,
They
that's,
just- That's a mikvah tumah. That's not a big deal. So now the Gemara has a challenge. We said that this brisa was the opinion of Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because we were looking to be able to say that there was a window to be able to become tamei after the new Nazir started, before the time of the carbon. Now the Gemara is going to suggest that there's also a window to become tamei before the time of the carbon, according to Rebbe. That's like the window is much smaller, but listen to this. Rebbe says the new count starts on the 8th day. New count starts on the 8th day. When do you bring the sacrifices? On the 8th day. So we're looking for someone's becoming tamei again and again and again, and he's only going to need to bring one sacrifice. So in order for it to become tamei again and again, we're going to have to say that he finished the first one, and then he became tamei again. If it's in the middle, if it's in anywhere be 1 to 7, then it's just one long tumah. So it has to be again and again. So according to Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda, where the count starts on the 7th day, we said that he becomes tamei on the 7th day, but at the end he only has to bring one sacrifice because the sacrifice would have been the 8th day, and he caught it in that window before the obligation to bring another sacrifice would be applied. And now the Gemara suggests that according to Rav Chisda could have said that it's Rebbe also. Why? Because the nighttime of the 8th day is not yet eligible to bring the sacrifices, but it's already time to restart the count of Naziris. So if he would become tamei at night, then according to Rebbe, the brisa could have been Rebbe. According to Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda, we had the whole 7th day before the sacrifices. According to Rebbe, I have not the 7th day because the new count doesn't start. It starts the 8th day. But when on the 8th day does it start? It would start at night. So if it starts at night, then I also have a window from nightfall until the morning when sacrifices are brought. I would be able to have another tumah, becomes tamei again. And at the end of it, all of this, it would only be one sacrifice because it wasn't yet eligible to bring the sacrifice. So the Gemara says, V'Rav Chisda. Oh, so one second. So, Vayomahu, I guess what we're saying now.
So Yom can mean a day or morning.
Right.
But sometimes it's Yom HaShmini more pesach.
Right. Right. That's interesting.
Oh, whoa. Is that interesting?
So it says, "V'Rav Chisda my duchke lo'ukmik Rav Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda." What was pressuring Rav Chisda from saying that it's following the view of Rav Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda? Look me, let him establish it. Can go in the nitma. I'm skipping the word the chazah. Can go in the nitma belel shmini. Tosfos takes it out. That he became tamei on the 8th day, on the 8th night, on the night of the 8th. For Rebbe, and it's Rebbe. That's the Gemara's suggestion. That what's pressuring Rav Chisda, what's compelling Rav Chisda to say that it's Rabbi Yehuda that gives him a window of a 7th day could really be Rebbe, and we're talking about it's the night of the 8th, where it's before the time of the sacrifice, right? Before the time of the sacrifice, but it's still the time when the new count starts. Midalei mukim Rebbe, from the fact that Rav Chisda did not say it's Rebbe, now we're getting a piece of information here. Lema kasavar, it must be that he holds Laila lav mechusas manhu. There's a discussion in the Gemara. If I say that the nighttime, I know I can't bring the sacrifice at night, but does that mean that I'm not obligated to bring it, and I just have to wait for the time. It doesn't mean that I'm not obligated at all. It doesn't mean I'm obligated, but I just have to wait for when the Beis Hamikdash opens up. Right? So it must be that the obligation already starts by nightfall. That's what we're going to have to say. I know you can't bring a sacrifice at night, but why did Rav Chisda not say that it was Rabbi? We have a gap over there of the nighttime, this window where he should have been able to become Tameh again, and still at the end only bring one sacrifice. It must be because if he would become Tameh then, he would have to bring another sacrifice. Why? Because the obligation for the sacrifice already kicks in by nightfall. So it wouldn't have helped. There is no window. So now we've established, based on what Rav Chisda's choice, saying it's Rabbi Yehuda, that it must be that he holds that Laila Lav Mechusar Zman, that the obligation to bring the sacrifice starts at night. Just you have a technical issue that the Beis Hamikdash is closed. It only starts in the morning, but the obligation is already at night. That's what we're seeing from this. Amar Ravada Barava says,
That's not a kiddush.
no,
That's the way we do things.
right, but
I mean, like you could be born, child could be born at noon one day. It becomes our mitzvah, starts the night
right,
before.
right. But there is a question in the Gemara. There's other Gemaras about this. If Laila Mechusar Zman, and this would be determining a yes or no. And because there's a machlekes about that, if Laila Mechusar Zman, and this discussion about that, we didn't want it to be that, okay, we just figured it out from this piece. It's a more complicated issue than just deciding it from this. So the Gemara now says, Rav Amar Ravada Barava, it's not necessarily so. You don't really have proof that Laila Lav Mechusar Zman, that the nighttime is already eligible for the sacrifice. It's just a technical issue. You don't have a proof for that. Why? Again, our proof was from the fact that Rav Chisda did not choose Rebbe as the author of the Bryce. Because it's really dependent. I could say this either way. Let's say you take it the other way. Let's say the nighttime is not eligible for the sacrifice. Then you would say that you have a window there where you can become Tameh. And then at the end, you're only going to be obligated one sacrifice. But if that's the case, when is the sacrifice actually an obligation? L'tzafra, in the morning. Naziris nami le'chayla al tzafra. According to that opinion, the Naziris only restarts in the morning. And then we're back to the same problem that we needed to have, that he became Tameh once and he became Tameh again. But in order to become Tameh again, it has to be at the time when the new Naziris had started. So when did you want to say that should be? At the window of the nighttime, at that gap. The problem is that the Naziris doesn't start until the morning. According to the opinion that says that the obligation for the sacrifice is in the morning, the Naziris only starts in the morning. So you're back to the same problem of it's only one long tumah. Let's go the other way. Let's go there. Yeah.
So in order for this to work, he would have to basically become impure like on the way to the Beis Hamikdash in the morning.
Right. But if that's the case, then if that's the case, then we would say that he doesn't have one sacrifice at the end; he would have many sacrifices at the end, and then it doesn't work either, because once there's an obligation. So we're looking for this complicated, that you have many impurities with one sacrifice.
But it can.
It works according to Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda holds that the recount of the Nazir starts before the obligation for the sacrifice. So according to him, it works. According to Rebbe, it's not going to work. If you want to say that the nighttime is already the time of the sacrifice, so Nazir Tahara, Chala Miyorta, then the new Nazir also starts at night. It should really be the opposite. V'yamrit, that the Nazir starts at night, then the nighttime is already the time of the sacrifice. If the Nazir starts at night, the nighttime is the time of the sacrifice, and then you're going to end up with more sacrifices than just the one at the end of all those tumas. Okay, so what the Gemara now said, Ravada Barava says, is that we don't have a proof that Rav Chisda holds that Laila Lav Zman, because actually what's going on here is that it's dependent one way and the other. If each one is dependent on, what we would need to do is divide the restart of the Naziris from the obligation of the sacrifice. And that we're not doing. We're associating them together. If the Nazirus starts at night, then the sacrifice also obligation is at night. So once you have the recount, you already have a new sacrifice. And if the Nazirus starts in the morning, if the sacrifice starts in the morning, then the recount also starts in the morning. So I'll never be able to have a new Nazirus without the new sacrifice, according to Rebbe. Okay, now the Gemara says Gufa. Tosfos here says that the Gufa doesn't make sense. we've been going through this. When we started learning, we said, when do you say Gufa? When do you say Amar Mar? Gufa, it's always re-examining a piece that we said. Amar Mar means the master said, which is also re-examining the piece that we mentioned. So we thought that there would be, Gufa would be a statement of Amirayim, and Amar Mar was a statement of Tanoim. Was a Bryson. That's what we thought. And it worked out about 95% of the time. Tosfos over here says that Gufa is always either for a Brisa or for a Memra, excuse me. A Memra, a statement of Amirayim. Which, when Tosfos says that, he's referring to those 5% of the time when Gufa is referring to a statement of Tanai. Gufa is usually Amirayim. Okay, so what does he do instead of that? So the Bach has a Tanur Rabbanan here. Tanur Rabbanan, started in a Brisa. The problem over here is that we're quoting something that we never said before, that we never said as a statement before. So the term Gufa doesn't apply. So it's better if it was just said Tanur Rabbanan started in a Brisa. Nitma b'shvi v'chazav nitma b'shvi. If someone became tummy on the seventh day, and then again becomes tummy a week later on the seventh day, he only brings one sacrifice. Nitma b'shmini v'chazav nitma b'shmini. If he becomes tummy on the eighth day, and then again it gets tummy on the eighth day, maybe karban al kol echad ve'echad. He has to bring a sacrifice for everyone, each tumah, because of the recount. Maschel amayna miyad, and he recounts immediately. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. This is the words of Rabbi Eliezer. Tosfos has a lot of problems with saying Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, because Rabbi Eliezer in the Mishnah said that you never have to bring a sacrifice if you become tummy on the first day. You only have to bring a sacrifice if you become tummy on the second day, 2 days, because it says Vayamim harishaynim yiplu. The first days fall off. But it says the first days fall off. That means if you become tummy on the first day, then this law doesn't apply. It can only be if you were 2 days into it, then you would have to bring the sacrifice. Tosfos has a question together, this and also other questions, and very interesting. Rebbe Tal Ranchberg. No, not Rebbe Tal Ranchberg. The Gra, Agayis Gra here takes out Eliezer. It says Divrei Rebbe. And the Gra says, and based on this, we've answered all the places questions. And not only that, but it even fits with Rebbe's opinion, because Rebbe holds that the recount starts on the eighth day. And this is exactly what he's saying. The eighth day is when you would have to bring the new sacrifice. If it becomes tummy on the seventh day, you don't have a new sacrifice. It comes tummy on the eighth day, you do. Okay, that's the opinion of Rebbe. The Chachamim say, Karban echad ala kol. Ad sheyavi chatasei. He only has to bring one sacrifice, even on the eighth day. Rebbe said that the recount starts before he brings the sacrifices. Where did Rebbe get that from? We had on the top, we said, Bayoim hahu, that it's the day that matters, not the sacrifice. The Chachamim say that's not so. The Chachamim say the chatas makes the difference. When he brings the sin offering, that's when everything restarts. Nitma, hevi chatasi v'nitma, hevi chatasi v'nitma. If once he brings the chatas, he becomes tummy, then maybe karvan al kol echad v'echad, then each time he becomes pure, he has to restart, he has to bring a new sacrifice. Why? Because the critical moment here was the bringing of the the sin offering. Hevi chatasi v'lei hevi ashamai. Let's say he brought the chatas, but he didn't bring the asham, which is the lamb. Mina, he's already counting already. The chatas is the critical point. The sin offering, which is one of the birds. Rabbi Shmuel ben Aishur Rabbi Yechon ben Breika, Rabbi Shmuel, this is the third opinion now. Again, we had so far the day, the chatas. Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yechon ben Breika, says Kshem shechatasa yikavte ken ashamai matli. And it's not the chatas; it's also the asham. It's the sin offering. Now, Bishleim ala Rabbi Eliezer. Let's drop the word Eliezer and let's say Bishleim ala Rabbi Amar Kraviki. This is Reisha Bayayimahu Bishleihevi Karbanaisav. I know where he knows that from because it says Bayayimahu on that day, and Bayayimahu on that day tells me that he doesn't have to bring the sacrifices. V'Rabbanan, what would the Rabbanan say? Hahu Afa Bishleihevi Ashamai. When it says that day, it's coming to exclude the asham. The day that matters. There is one animal that also matters, but it doesn't. It's not all the sacrifices that matter. And I get from the hahu that day that it's coming to tell me that you don't have to wait for the asham. Rabbi Shmuel, but according to Rabbi Shmuel, hahu lamali, what does he learn from the pasuk of hahu on that day? If it would be Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda would say that day is referring to the seventh day, but it's not. It's Rabbi Shmuel. He says it's the eighth day, and if it's the eighth day, why does it have to say that? You have to wait for the sacrifices. Amalach, he says to you, Hahu, that day, or that, he doesn't have to bring the oila. Only two sacrifices. The chatas and the asham, not the oila. The logic actually, Taisva says, is hard to explain. Yeah. Why? You'll see in a second. The Rabbanan, what do the Rabbanan do about the Oila? Well, the Rabbanan, the Chachamim, they said that you don't have to bring the Asham. What about the Oila? The Rabbanan, Oila like by a muta. According to Rabbanan, we don't need a pasuk to tell me that you don't have to wait for that because Dairin Ba'almo, that's just a gift. The Oila is just a gift. So the problem over here is that according to Rabbi Shmuel, I can't say that the Oila is just a gift. Because one of the three, but it depends on how I look at that. Do I say that all three are atonements, or do I say that two of them are atonements, the sin and the guilt, and the oila, the burnt offering, is just a present? The Rabbanan say that two of them are atonements, and the third one is just a present. Rabbi Yishmael says no. The third one is also, the oila is also a atonement offering. But nevertheless, the pasuk of Ahu tells me that you don't have to wait for the oila to start the recount. That's what I learned from Ahu. The Rabbanan say I don't even need a pasuk for the oila. Chachamim. According to Rebbe, you don't need a pasuk for any of them. The Hahu tells me that it doesn't matter. It's just the day that matters. My time the Rabbanan. What's the reason for the Rabbanan that say you have to wait for the chatas, but not for the asham? In the oila, of course not. The Tanya was taught in a brayso. V'hizir la'Hashem es yimin Yisrael. V'hevi keves ben shnasi la'Hashem. Okay, this is a quote from pasuk Yud Beis. The end of this whole story. It says, and he recounts and he brings the asham. Ma Talmud Laimar. Why does it have to say that? In all other places in the Torah, the asham is significant that it affects the process. Maybe this asham also affects the process. Talmud Laimar v'hizir v'hevi. First he becomes the Nazir, and then he brings the sacrifice, which means that the recount starts before the asham. The order of the way that's written. Even though he doesn't bring it, the recount starts. Rabbi Shmuel ben Aishur Rabbi Yechon ben Breika Omer. Rabbi Shmuel, son of Rabbi Yechon ben Breika, he says, "Hizir v'hevi, emasai hizir b'zman shehevi." He says that it's dependent one on the other. When does he become a new Nazir? Only if he brings it. I know it says it first, but the idea is he can only restart if he brings the asham. New piece over here. Let's leave it over here. We can do this on Sunday.
Oh, wow.
Okay. On your test.
So we just start the new daf.
I started the new daf, but I'm only 3 lines in. All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a good Shabbat.